Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Bonjour Tennis Synthesis podcast. Here I am with my partner, Steve Concharli, and with our special guest, Joel Drucker. Steve, how are you doing today?
We're all doing good. Thank you very much. Yes, Guy, thank you. And Joel, thank you for being with us. Let me give a little official introduction to Joel Drucker. Joel Drucker is one of the top tennis writers in the world. Uh, and if you put tennis and passion in the same sentence, I think you will end up with also the name Joel Drucker, because I don't know of anyone that is more passionate about this game than Joel Drucker. His passion, like I said, has not only put him to the top of the writing world in tennis. He is a historian at large for the International Tennis Hall of Fame. We're all envious because he's attended over 100 Grand Slam events. He's authored a couple of books, and we'll get into some of those. A couple of great contrasts in those books with the characters involved. But Joel, again, welcome. We're delighted to have you, and it's always fun talking tennis with you. Joel Drucker never forgets a fact, never forgets a match. And he's just wonderful to talk tennis with. So, Joel, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be here with you guys. Fantastic. Really excited to talk about tennis. It's not easy to pay my bills and make a living, but somehow I managed to think about tennis 19 hours a day.
So that's not bad. Now, I want to quote a sentence from you here, but because I think it's awesome. You say, "My entire life has been a tennis fantasy camp. My career in tennis was not made because of what I did with a racket, but none of it would have happened if I'd not held a racket." That's a pretty powerful statement, Joel. So go ahead, elaborate a bit on that, if you would, please.
Wow, Steve, you just give me a feed, just like the Teach VR. Just give me a nice feed, nice waist high feed. I can take a good hit at it. I would say, and you know this, Steve, because I've attended your fantasy camp more than 25 times, tennis fantasies. I'm an okay civilian. I've had many chances to hit with pros that have hit with me. They say, "Oh, not bad for a civilian." So I know how to play tennis, but I didn't play college tennis. I went to a school. It was a very good college school. I would have had to go to a school, a very esoteric school if I wanted to play college tennis. So I enjoyed playing tennis. I love playing tennis. I'm playing tennis later today. But my real joy in tennis, my career in tennis, that is, not just my joy, has come from writing about it, studying it. My late older brother said something to me once. I was about 6 months into playing, and I was reading one of these tennis books that have all these data in it. And I said, "Hey," in fact, the date was December 7th, 1972. I said to my brother, "Hey, tomorrow is Julie Hellman's birthday. She's going to be 27. This is a woman who's one of the original 9, a future Hall of Famer." And my brother, like an older brother, paused and he goes, "If you played a little more and you talked about tennis or read about it, you might be a good player one day." So, it's kind of interesting. But you know what? And that has made all the difference. It's all fine. I greatly enjoy playing tennis. I have a wonderful life on the court, and I've been able to be fortunate enough to create a career and many opportunities for myself off the court in my livelihood.
Okay, now you have, just like your tennis style, being a lefty, it's pretty unique. I would imagine that you have your own special approach to how you write as well. So, if you can differentiate what drives you, where's your mind when you're starting to write?
Well, as a lefty, you're always looking for different angles and different insights and try to look at things not necessarily differently, just the way I look at them. I mean, I like to see parts of the court and parts of the game that are, I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I just see things, the questions that interest a lot of people are not necessarily the questions that interest me. For example, you hear a lot of talk about GOAT, the GOAT, who's the GOAT? And I said, I'm a conscientious objector to that question. I don't think that's the right question. I've studied so much history of the game that there's no GOAT of anything. There's no GOAT of writing. There's no GOAT of basketball. Why should there be a GOAT? Why should there be one single? And so I like seeing the different things, different players, different eras, the whole circle of time in tennis. For example, one thing I enjoy doing, rather than doing something like, say, how would Rod Laver do versus Roger Federer, which to me is science fiction. There's so many things that make it a silly comparison. That's like asking how would Genghis Khan have done versus William Westmoreland? Who even knows? So I prefer something where I actually learn. And I learn when I do things. And Steve, I've done this at our Tennis Fantasies event many times. Go ask the Australians who they'd rather play, Laver or Rosewall. And Rod Laver's a great player. Ken Rosewall is a great player. But you'll find out the vast majority of them would have preferred playing Rod Laver because they knew he might be off that day and they might have a chance. And then they give me some insights into Rosewall. Now I'm learning something. And learning that stuff, learning those things, that kind of constant kind of hunting and gathering and asking questions and studying things, was not necessarily on an assignment. The assignment didn't call for how is Laver in today's game or whatever. It's just feeding my curiosity. So my thing is like a continuous loop of tennis history and things that are constantly fueling my mind. A lot of people, for example, know that Rafael Nadal is a lefty with a big topspin forehand, but not as many people are willing to understand the connection between Rafael Nadal, Thomas Muster, Guillermo Vilas, and see those things and how they play out and bring that to the story. So I think what I try to bring to my stories is a certain texture and a richness that people may have thought of. It doesn't just fall prey to what I call the question of least resistance.
Question of least resistance. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now you mentioned the three great clay quarters. So tell us a little bit about the similarities and the differences. Let's take with Rafa and Vilas, different eras, but people that dominated the soft courts during their era.
Big topspin forehands, big different grips. Vilas and Bjorn Borg brought a whole new kind of topspin to tennis. You know, Steve, you were teaching right in the middle of that period in the early 70s when the game started to change and guys like Borg and Vilas came around and began to hit the ball with far more margin, far more topspin. And if you looked at Vilas and Nadal, you'd see a lot of similarities. The difference, Vilas had a one-handed backhand and he was playing in a different era against different kind of players. And in the middle, in the bridge of that is someone like Thomas Muster, who was a little more like Vilas with a big lefty topspin forehand and the one-handed backhands. I call those guys, I gave a talk once to the USPTA, or the RSPA as it's now known. I gave it on the four different lefty styles. And I had those guys, I call those guys the conquering conquistadors. They want you to suffer. They don't care if the rally is 3 balls, 8 balls, 15 balls, 20 balls. They're fine with that. They're ready to grind you all day long. And there's a continuity. Of course, they did it in different eras versus different opponents with different strings, but you see the threads, and I enjoy seeing those threads that connect players from one era to another.
Okay, you have a long, lustrous career. You've covered just about everything, like you said, from news reporting to features to books and whatnot. But can you give us a couple of your favorite stories that you wrote, and why were they your favorites?
Well, I sometimes like the ones that I see them in the wake of them. I think there's no one else could have come up with this angle or this kind of thing. So I'll give you an example. One day I was at a bookstore when I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I saw a book called Bukowski in a Sundress. Bukowski is a prominent California writer, Charles Bukowski. And this woman named Kim Adenizio is a poet, very literary from San Francisco. She worked in San Francisco, known among beat poets and inspired by beat poets. She's a poet. I'm reading this book. This has nothing to do with tennis to me. And I come across it. There's an essay about her mother. Her mother is a great player named Pauline Betts. Pauline Betts won Wimbledon the only time she ever played it in 1946. Dated Spencer Tracy, the great actor, dated boxing champion Jack Dempsey. And I'm reading this daughter's essay about her mother. And I also learned that Kim is the daughter of a sports writer named Bob Addy, who worked for the Washington Post for years. And she reclaimed her father's ancestral name, Adenizio. Wow, it's kind of interesting. And Kim, it turns out, lived near me in Oakland. So I got to know her and we chatted some. And I thought, I'm really interested in the connection between the life of a poet and her mother. And the story is called Fingerprints, about how does the mother influence the daughter? how does the daughter influence the mother? It was kind of a twin profile because the way Kim described it, she said, I said, what is poetry at its essence? She says, poetry is turning thought into action. I said, wow, that sounds like an athlete. And she talked about her life. She talks about her life as a poet where she travels the world trying to give poetry gigs and make money. I said, wow, you sound like a barnstorming pro tennis player in the pre-open era. And so I explored what they each were and how they each became who they became. And there's her brother, Kim's brother, a fine player named Gary Addy, explains to me, yeah, the women in my family have some pretty strong skills and powers. So it's this twin profile, and there's the cover of that. Pauline was on the cover of Time magazine. Kim was has a very flamboyant poet, very literary. So that was a story that I really was very proud of.
That's pretty unique, without question. That you tied those two together, without question. All right, now, like I said, very few people know as much about the game as you. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, which probably you don't have a definitive answer, but in your estimation, if you were to name the top 5 or 6, 10 players, take male players that take female players. Let's limit it to about 5, okay, or whatever number. Looking back, starting with the women, who in your estimation are the queens? There's no GOAT, as you mentioned. Okay, there's no GOAT. There's just reigning champions of their era.
Oh, the A pluses, the ones who's like it's like in baseball, the ones we call like 350 hitters, like the real
A
titans.
That's good. Yeah.
In no particular order, and we're starting with the woman.
Yep.
We're starting with the woman. I would think you're looking at Helen Wills and Margaret Court, Martina Navratilova, Stephanie Graf, Chrissy Everett, Martina Navratilova, Serena Williams. I think that's a pretty good. Did I get to 5 or 6? I forget.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. That fill up a whole room of trophies with that crew right there, wouldn't it?
Oh my God!
Yep.
And the men, I guess we'll go a little back and we'll go from the present backwards. We've got to look at the recent big 3 of Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer. Then we're looking at a series of people. At the A plus, we have Rod Laver, Don Budge, who won all 4 majors in 1938. At the A plus, it's let's see. There's some interesting thoughts about people like Ken Rosewall and Jimmy Connors and Pancho Gonzalez. Some interesting metrics. I think though Pete Sampras, I would put in there, of course. And then there are a lot of other greats in there too. What's interesting, I've noticed the women who dominate tend to dominate more. So they gobble up more of the goodies the way Chris and Martina did in their time. So they're like 360 hitters, and there aren't as many 310 hitters in that period. Whereas the men, you look at people like Yvonne Lendl and Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe and Andre Agassi. Those guys have some pretty good resumes too.
We better throw John Newcomb in there too.
Yes, we got absolutely. Yes, we should definitely throw John Newcomb in there. Absolutely, he won more. He and Roy Emerson won more slams than any other man. Roy Emerson won 28, so he's in there too. As is John Newcomb. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now Newcomb won 26. Debatable whether it was 25 or 26. I think you know that story. Can you relay a little bit of that story? The debate as to whether or not John Newcomb has 25 or 26 Grand Slams.
John Newcomb and Margaret Court reached the finals of the Australian Championship mixed doubles. I believe it was 1965. I can get this right here in one of my reference books. And they reached the final. They were playing the team of Owen Davidson and I think his name was Robin Ebbern. Let's see here. I have this. Robin Ebbern.
I believe a woman that Owen Davidson was dating at the time. Is that correct?
I believe so. And so that final, it was not played due to weather conditions. So John Newcomb and Margaret Smith were probably a strong favorite in that match, given that John Newcomb had a better career, was a better player than Owen Davidson. Bless the late great Owen Davidson, but John Newcomb was better, and Margaret Smith Court was certainly way better than Robin Ebbern. So we want to. So there we have it. That's the 1965 Australian mixed. That yes, right.
Okay, well, and of course, the debate that we all enjoyed so many times on the Tennis Fantasies was Owen Davidson arguing with John Newcomb in front of 100 guys that he and Robin would have probably beaten John and Margaret Court in that final, and then Newcomb says, "No way, he's claiming the 26th title." So, so that's quite a story. And our buddy John and our late friend Owen Davidson. Joel, you wrote a couple of books now. You're just finishing one. You're I don't know if it was your first book or not, but the first book of yours that I read was Jimmy Connors Saved My Life. And then, of course, you've just completed. Here we go. There's the cover. Jimmy Connors Saved My Life. You recognize that stance anywhere. You don't even need. You can see that from the shadow. What was the initiative to write that particular book, and give us just a thumbnail of what went on in that book?
Well, one great thing about that book, I launched that book in Cincinnati, Steve. I came to the tournament in Cincinnati and stayed with our good friend from Tennis Fantasies, Ken Munson, in 2004. And I did that intentionally because I always felt that Connors, being from the Midwest, he kind of enjoyed playing in that muggy, humid Mason-Dixon line region. So he enjoyed playing in places like Cincinnati and Columbus and Indianapolis. The impetus for me was growing up as a child in Los Angeles. Initially, I didn't like Connors because I thought he was a jerk and kind of a punk and all these things. He was kind of taken over from the old guard of Australian legends who I'd first grown to. But I was about 14 then. And I was, wait a second, this is kind of my era. And what Connors did, he was kind of like the Elvis. He was like the first rock guy. The guys before Connors were more like crooners. They were great singers, but they were understated. They were subdued. Connors is like going electric in a way, right? Well, with my, I brought a prop here. You'll know this one, Steve.
Yeah. There you go. You got your prop, the old T2000. Jimmy Connors, probably the only guy in the world who could play with it.
Oh my God, that's true. Boy, you better had some pretty good timing because that sweet spot
have
was.
you ever seen that racket? Did you ever hit a ball with that racket, Gil?
Yeah, you know,
Never.
it was invented by Rene Lacoste. It was invented by a
really?
French.
Look at that.
Oui, monsieur.
Look
And
at
so,
that.
so for me, what Connors personified, I think for a little while when I first began to play tennis at the age of 12, I spent the couple of years thinking tennis was about, you hit the ball better and who hits the ball better than someone. And then I played a match at a park, and everybody has someone like this. Everybody has, I guess you call it a nemesis, someone who won't play with you, who'll duck you, thinks he's better than you. And there's a kid in my area named Mark Binstock. It's in the book, so I wrote about it. And he wouldn't play with me. And he lived about 2 miles from me, and he had this nice baseline game, and was kind of hit the ball kind of well. And I thought, God. And then I had the chance to play Mark Binstock in a tournament. He was seeded 1 in the C tournaments at my local park, and I was 14. And I thought, and you know this, Steve, from how I play, I like to come to net. I'm a better volleyer than I am a ground stroker. So I thought, I'm not going to come to net against this guy like constantly. I'm going to just press him. And then I won them. I beat him 6-4, 6-4. But I realized that a tennis match, and this is where Jimmy Connors fits in, a tennis match wasn't just about hitting the ball better than someone. It was personal. It was kind of a form of combat. And I wrote in my book, it was the first time I tasted blood in a tennis match. And I liked it. And Connors becomes in time kind of the rocket fuel avatar. I'm a very cerebral, bookish, reflective by nature person. It's like I tend to be a little more pensive. I'm the second born in my family. I reflect on things. But the notion of sports and participation kind of throws me into battle. It's like my brother saying, maybe you played a little bit more, you might be good at this sport. So I think Connors became this avatar of showing this is what it's like to throw yourself into the arena. This is what it's like to throw yourself into battle and give all of your heart and soul. And so I wrote about Connors. I wrote an essay about him in college. I fortunately got to meet him just after he won Wimbledon. A month after graduating college, I'm interviewing the Wimbledon champion. So I'm kind of, but he was an icon, and my friends and I, he lived in the area. He practiced at UCLA about 2 miles from my house. He had his rackets strung at the same place. Our high school team had their rackets strung. So he was like a local folk hero in the area. That
Well, he was
fueled the book.
yeah, he was certainly a folk hero throughout the United States for sure. And you're right. He was the Elvis, and all the other guys were Frank Sinatra, and they were solid. But he was the boom. Uh huh. All right,
Well, you
good.
were
Now,
right there, Steve. You were right there you were right there in the 70s. You're
yep,
older than me, but you were right there. You and I were both kind of like made a lot of our lives in the tennis boom, rich 70s, when tennis becomes rock and roll. I mean,
that's right.
you weren't wearing colorful feel clothes before 1970, were you? And then
Not
suddenly,
much before
boom,
that.
press.
No, it was all whites here. Exactly right.
Right.
And the tennis balls became yellow in what 1968, if I remember right.
Well,
They were white.
around that time,
Yeah, they
it's
were
funny.
white up until that time. Yeah.
I
Uh,
never played a match with white balls. I've
you
played
didn't, huh?
balls with
Okay.
white balls,
Well,
but I've never
that's
played a match.
yeah. You're a youngster then. You're a youngster
Oh,
then. That's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now tell us again. The quite a contrast in characters and main characters in your next book with Charlie Passerelle, just one of the not only true gentlemen but true businessmen, and one of the pioneers that made tennis what it is right now. There's the cover right there. Charlie Passerelle serving first. Okay, so walk us through what's going on with that book, and again, how did it get started? What was the
Well,
what was the
this book really grows out of tennis fantasies. Charlie Passerelle, I first went to cover his tournament. I interviewed him for the first time in 1992 for a story I wrote about the great Pancho Gonzalez, who was a mentor to both Charlie and Jimmy Connors. But Charlie, it's interesting, as you know, Steve, Jimmy Connors was a dynamic returner, and Charlie Passerelle was a dynamic server. And Charlie, I interviewed him for the story in 1992, and I got to know him a little bit of the tournament as a reporter, and we would talk. And there's Charlie's such one of the most affable people you'll ever meet, Charlie Pascal. And then we were rookies at Tennis Fantasies the same year in 1995. So I got to know him more then over the years, over the 20, 30 years over that time. I got to know Charlie more. I played for him many times. So he was a co-captain of the Mongol Kangaroos with John Newcomb. So he watched me choke and win and lose. And we got to know each other better. And a couple of years ago at Tennis Fantasy, he says, hey, let's get together after camp. So we met at the La Jolla Beach and Tennis Club. And it was Charlie's idea. Charlie wants to create a legacy for all the friends and family and people he's known in his life. He's a great, for lack of a better term, community builder. I mean, this man built 3 stadiums in less than 20 years and created a tournament that's considered the 5th Grand Slam. So we have covered the waterfront of Charlie's life, and it's written in Charlie's voice. The first book, the Connors book, is very much in my voice. You're going to hear it's more about me and my growth and how Connors helped fuel it. This is Charlie's life, and we have collaborated to tell his story about his incredible family. His parents are both great players who played the U.S. Championships, which is the U.S. Open. He took lessons from one of the iconic instructor named Welby Van Horn. Became a great player. Is the best friends with Arthur Ashe, which is an incredible chapter. I mean, their journey makes the TV movie Brian's Song look like a short story compared to the epic qualities of their story. And Charlie, being born in 1944, he's right in there with Billie Jean King and John Newcomb and Arthur Ashe. They really transformed tennis. They went from hoping to get food at the club where they were playing a tournament to playing for hundreds of thousands of dollars on TV. So Charlie and transforming the game from an amateur sport into a full-fledged pro sport. So, and just an epic tale.
Give us, if you can, one of your favorite or most touching or most revealing pieces of the book. Something that just really had you sit up and say, "Wow."
Well, all right, I'll tell you. Here's a story that Charlie told them. I also tell a story that I saw with Charlie before we wrote the book. Charlie is 14 years old and one of the best 14-year-olds in the country, and he's growing up in Puerto Rico. and he has a chance to get into the main draw of the Caribbean Hilton Invitational, which is a big tournament that came to his home club at the Caribbean Hilton. So he's in the qualifying, and he plays a guy named Paolo Braschi, who's a good local player, roughly 40 years old or so, and a very steady player, what you might call a pusher. I don't like that term, but that's a term. The guy just gets a lot of balls back. And Charlie's saying, I have 14. I should go right through this guy. Easy. So Charlie starts a match, and it turns out it's not so easy. Balls keep coming back, and it's kind of tight, and the rallies are longer. And 14-year-old's not so much having his way with the old guy. And Charlie gets a little pouty. He's not Ilya or McEnroe or Connors, but he's getting a little sulking. And, what do we do when we sulk? You sulk, you bang balls into corners, you kind of act that way. So Charlie's dad, Big Charlie, as he was called, or Charles Sr., waves him over, says, come over here. And Charlie, what do you want, Dad? He goes, I want you to default this match right now. I got to beat this guy. I want to get into the tournament. I don't care if you ever walk on a court again if you behave like that. Shake hands and you are done. So sure enough, that's exactly what Charlie did. Shook hands, was defaulted. 2 years later, Charlie won the Sportsmanship Award at Kalamazoo at the National Boys Championships. And he was pretty much always a good sport. But how's that for parenting? I mean, that would be something I'd give $1 to every parent who does that today. I mean, I'd give a lot of.
Yeah. We don't see a whole lot of that today. That's for sure. So, Charlie Passerelle, of course, one of our dear friends from Tennis Fantasies, and I can tell a little bit of a roundabout story. I'm kind of here in Cincinnati, and here with Tennis Fantasies, and here with Bonjour Tennis Fantasies. Indirectly because of Charlie Passerelle. Long story. Nick Bollettieri was running the Western Championships up in Springfield, Ohio, back in the 60s. And this woman came by and said, can I buy a can of balls for my son to warm up? It was the day before the tournament. And Nick, being Nick, said, no, you can't buy a can of balls, but here, take 2 of them as my guest. So do this, and kid goes out, and the tournament finishes, and Nick gets a call from the Rockefeller family, who owned Dorado Beach Hotel. And they said, you've been recommended. We're looking for a tennis director. You've been recommended. And he said, well, who would recommend? And he said, well, that lady that you gave the tennis balls to. And of course, that was Charlie Passerelle's mom. Okay. So Nick gets the job in Puerto Rico, ends up running the camps in Wisconsin. Boom. I get involved with Nick. Boom. So indirectly, Charlie, thank you very much for starting the path for me to be here in Cincinnati in tennis. So, okay, Joel, a couple of tough ones now. Besides Sinner and Alcaraz, who can win another Grand Slam? Who's going to be the next to win another men's Grand Slam? So that's kind of a 3-pronged question here, I guess. So
predictions. I don't.
And when?
Oh, and when you want that too. Wow. If I knew that, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be sitting there. I mean, geez, Louise. Predictions. Wow. That's an outcome-based question. I enjoy, and again, this is a more personal bias, but I think he has skills. I think Ben Shelton is pretty good. I don't know when. No one knows when. No one knew. I think Sinner and Alcaraz are head and shoulders above that. I mean, it's like 3 is closer to 12 than he is to 2. Whoever's 3. But yeah, I like Shelton. I think I admire Taylor Fritz a lot. I think Shelton's got a more broader game, but he's not quite as good yet. I think that's a possibility.
So for year 2026, you thinking that Shelton will win one of the Grand Slam, or you think it's going to be spread?
I don't. The only thing I like I don't like making predictions. I don't like making predictions. I think I think they're kind of outcome based. I can tell you this. I can think what needs to happen for Shelton to win a Grand Slam. More of a process question is more. He probably needs to get a little more efficiency and success week in, week out. Maybe a little more consistent with his ground strokes, and just kind of put these pieces together. Because the all court players take a little longer to improve. The baseliners come with the batteries included. They're ready to go. I mean, Steve, you recall in the Midwest, someone like Aaron Krickstein wins Kalamazoo, and next month he's beating Peter Scarlaitis at the U.S. Open. Boom, he's there. All quarters like a Ben Shelton, the Pete Sampras, a Martina Navratilova, they take a little while to put all the parts and pieces together. So he's one, but no, I'm not. I don't. Predictions. You know,
Okay, give us your thoughts about the the American tennis scene now with men and women. How are we looking overall in terms of are we improving? Are we taking more of that base, or are we going backwards? Are we standing still? What in your estimation, how healthy? I guess the question more specifically is how healthy is American professional tennis?
well, you look at the women's game. The women's game has continued tremendous success for years and years. I mean, we had just more recently, we had the Williams sisters who have had epic careers, but very recently, look at last year, Madison Keys wins Australia, Coco Gauff wins at Roland Garros, Amanda Anamasova reaches the finals of Wimbledon and the US Open. That's a pretty good track record of players and lots of others. People like Jessica Pegula is like an eternal campaigner. I mean, she's kind of in the mix of the top 10. Emma Navarro had a great year in 2024, less so in 2025, but I like a lot of her game and the way she approaches it. The men less so, less results. The men, there has not been an American man winning a Grand Slam singles title in 22 years since Andy Roddick. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. I think a lot of it is the cultural presence of tennis as a sport in our country. Women's pro tennis is the most lucrative pro sport for women in the world. So that has a lot of appeal, and there are also more scholarships for women. So there's a lot of there's a system by which women can engage and be rewarded in tennis. Tennis for a young boy wanting to be an athlete may not quite have as much appeal as basketball, football, baseball, even golf. And so the people who come to tennis, I also think there's a skills gap in how young boys learn to play tennis. I mean, I remain staggered by how few practice sets I hear youngsters play these days. I'm just blown away by it, and then go to play tournaments. I talk to many. I have a hard time finding a junior who plays more than 4 practice sets a week or 2 a week. And I say to those kids, I say, the closest I ever got to Wimbledon was writing about it. And when I was 15, I would play 7 to 8 or 9 practice sets a week in sunny California, where courts are free and accessible. And I think about that, and I also see the skills being built. Like I remember there's a 12-year-old I was playing. He was getting pretty good, and he's getting past me and the other 4 or 5 hacks, and he's playing doubles. And he's not serving and volleying. He's just wailing forehands. And I say to Dad, he ought to serve and volley when he plays us. I mean, it's not like I'm Andre Agassi with a return serve here. And he goes, well, he's playing today's game. And I go, I don't want your kid playing the game of today. I want him playing the game of tomorrow, because the game of tomorrow is going to beat the game of today. And that's what I think you look at someone like Alcaraz or Federer, it's like, learn the whole game. Put some energy into broadening the skill set. I think we've had a long generation of Americans who have mostly been about group instruction, big serves, big forehands, and a lot fewer skills. So that kind of bites them.
Yeah,
That's why
I tend to agree with that.
Yeah. I'm excited about. That's why I'm excited about Ben Shelton. I've been excited for a long time about Sebastian Korda and his versatility, but I'm wondering how much about the physicality of his game and what he brings to the tennis overall. I like his game, but we'll see.
Okay. All right. Now I got another question. Of course, recently they made all of the 1,000 men's tournaments into 2-week tournaments. A lot of talk about potential injury and just being a little too tough a schedule. You got an opinion on that?
Well, I think last summer there was a bit of a inflection point with the back-to-back of Canada followed by Cincinnati, and the feeling that even though these events are fewer matches than the slams and not 3 out of 5, they're occupying the bandwidth of a player over 2 weeks. In other words, if I commit to play one of these events, I'm kind of on the work clock for that time. And even though I'm only going to play 6 matches, something's got to kind of be sorted out with that about how it works. On the other hand, some of these players, they want more work. So instead of these events being 56 draws, they're 96 draws. So there's more opportunities for more players. It's like, well, wait, I thought you guys wanted more money. I always think when I hear these thoughts about the schedule, if you're a top 10 player, top 5, it might be too long. If you're outside the top 60, it's not long enough. You need more. Enough. You need more. Those guys will play 65 weeks a year because they need the matches. If you're in that range between, let's say, 15 and 50, it's just right. It's just right. It's all good. You're not playing 6 matches in slams. You're not playing 5 matches in thousands. You're getting to the quarters. But I've got to think the ATP is thinking about how to manage the workflow, because these events, these jumbo 96 draw thousands. So maybe they create a system where the player doesn't have to commit to all 9 of them. Or 9 of them. Maybe the player gets to pick 7. You have to have 7 that are mandatory, and maybe some more options, similar to what Monte Carlo has become, where it's not mandatory to be in Monte Carlo. So maybe there's some scheduling relief that the player can create for himself. On the other hand, I also think any player who commits to exhibitions in the off season should waive their right to say the season is too long.
Bingo. Isn't that the truth? So, Joel, you've alluded to the fact that, of course, this is how we met. We met at Tennis Fantasies, and not only are you one of the premier authorities on tennis in the world, but you're as passionate about playing the game as anybody. And you participated in our fantasy camps, and you're familiar with our international Bonjour tennis fantasy camps. So, let's put your tennis player hat on right now, okay? And tell us about the experience and what somebody can get out of that experience, other than just playing tennis, which we can play anywhere, of course. But so let me throw it to you.
I set this team just a few months ago, Steve, and you were there. You saw it. We had at Tennis Fantasies, it's the competitive piece is very big at the Tennis Fantasies event at Newcomb's Ranch. And the event came down to a 3-team playoff. And on the last day, me and a good buddy named Dave Orton were playing a 10-point tiebreak with 100 people watching, being coached by legends versus 2 other campers. I think it's enthralling. I think of it as the meta tennis experience. It's the meta tennis experience and you get a sense of what it's really like to play in front of people with pressure, and it's a team event. So, and I've had many such experiences there, but just this last year was probably my greatest one in 30 years there. But I think it's very visceral, and it's a little bit like a league tennis on steroids times 10, because you've got teammates, and you've got legends, and they're coaching and watching and paying attention. And I think it also shows the connection between their efforts and our efforts. And I'll tell you a story from the first year I went to camp, and you'll know this story, Steve, because I've written about it. We've talked about it. And one day there, Charlie Pastoral tells a story about an epic Wimbledon match he lost to Marcia Gonzalez. It was 11-9 in the 5th, more than 5 hours long. Charlie had 7 match points and lost on center court Wimbledon. Tells that story. 2 days later, Charlie is coaching a player named Mark Benjamin. Mark Benjamin lost the first set in this match, playing a guy named Willie Bell, and Mark Benjamin is now leading 6-0 in the second set tiebreaker. If Mark wins that tiebreak, and then there's another tiebreaker and wins that match, his team moves forward. It's one of these, or it moves back. So it's like Mark loses the match, loses 8 straight points, loses the match, and he's sitting there devastated with a towel over his head. And Charlie's captain walks up and says, "Mark, bad luck. It happens. Believe me, it happens." And for that 1 second, whether you're playing on center court or that was court 7 at the John Newcomb Ranch, we are connected. I call it the democracy of effort. And to me, that's what the camp is about. That's why I like playing with all sorts of players of all sorts of levels. I've had the chance to play with players of world-class skill who take time to hit with me. not just at the tennis fantasy, but otherwise, and everybody can gain something from someone else. So I think it's this whole equalizing and this vulnerability of engaging in competition with people in a real and vivid way. It's visceral, it's collegial, it's competition, it's camaraderie, it's all of that. And the people who you've played, like it's a certain special engagement.
Steve, can you tell us? Thank you, Joe. Steve, can you tell us a little bit? Joe has been talking about the tennis fantasy camp. Can you tell us a little bit when and where they take place, and how can people attend?
Okay, yes. We have two tennis fantasy programs. One is for men and women, coming up this March 5th through the 8th, and it's at John Newcomb's Tennis Ranch. We've been doing this now for 39 years, and then our October event is the 18th through the 23rd of October, and that's for men. That's a men's only event. Of course, you can go to the website, tennisfantasies.net, to get information about it. And then also, that leads me into Joel. You've not only covered the slams, but I believe you've found a way to make yourself end up on a tennis court at all of these top venues, whether it be Wimbledon, whether it be Roland Garros, or the Italian or Australian Open. So you've played at all of these wonderful venues, and of course that's what our Bonjour tennis fantasies are all about. So share a little bit about your experience, about just the feeling of actually playing at these venues.
Well, you play at those venues, you get to feel like, wow, this is what it's like to been on some of the courts that these great players have played. And it helps you see the game in a bigger, broader way. It helps you see, just to feel it visceral. It's visceral, it's kinesthetic, it's something other than just abstract. So it's fun. Often at these champs, you get a chance to hit with some legendary players. So that's a fun experience too, to see what the ball is like of a world-class player like a Brian Gottfried or a Luke Jensen or Roy Emerson, John Newcomb, all these people. And so it just enhances one's not just appreciation, but understanding of the game. I mean, someone asked me once after hitting with a world-class player, they said, well, what do they do different than us? I said, well, outside of everything. But I learned some things about that, about how they address the ball and how they balance themselves. And I also said to someone, I said, if you ever have a chance to hit with someone like that, don't try to impress them with power. If you could, they'd know who you were anyway. Impress them with consistency. You're playing catch. They're playing catch with you. This helps you learn how to keep the ball in play and maybe play within yourself and not try to hit the ball, at work factor 8. Just a certain kind of relaxation and enjoyment of hitting balls and in some cases playing points. All of that, just great.
That's great. So there's no game in the world like our tennis, and there's no fraternity quite in the world like our tennis fraternity. So we thank all of you for playing the game of tennis, promoting the game of tennis, smiling while you're doing it, and people like Joel and I just feel so fortunate that and Guy, that we can make a living doing something that we are very passionate about. So I want to thank Joel Drucker, like I said at the beginning. Tennis, passion, Joel Drucker, they all run together in the same sentence. Drux, thank you very much for your time, and it's always great talking to you, and we'll do this again sometime. All right, buddy? Okay, thank you very much.